Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and a special welcome and thank you to the men and women in uniform who are joining us here today. My name is Steve Nordland, and I am the Vice President and General Manager of Boeing's Air Dominance Division. I first wanted to say thank you to the Navy League for hosting all of us here at Sea, Air, and Space, and thanks for the opportunity to conduct this very important panel. It is an honor to sponsor today's important conversation on the Navy's strategic approach for modernization, air domain capabilities to stay ahead of a rapidly advancing and real threat environment, today, tomorrow, and for decades to come. I'll turn it over to the moderator, Admiral Bill Gortney, in a moment, but I'd like to take a minute to reflect on a few things that we at Boeing are doing to help the Navy get ready for the future fight. I'm proud to be here to represent Boeing and its Air Dominance Division and more than 10,000 strong workforce in our division. We're a portfolio of advanced programs, distinct capabilities, and talented people brought together very intentionally to help make sure our customers' future for owning the air dominance is a reality. Our division includes our crewed fighter portfolio, including the F/A-18 Super Hornet, the EA-18G Growler, and the F-15EX Eagle II. It includes our ground-breaking multi-mission uncrewed aircraft like the MQ-25 Stingray and the MQ-28 Ghostbat, and the aircraft's next-generation fighter pilots were trained on the T-7A Red Hawk. Our Phantom Works team, which includes our Virtual Warfare Center, is embedded in the business tighter than ever before, ensuring we are weaving all the incredible things the team is doing across our combat aircraft portfolio as we design, produce, and deliver what comes next. For Boeing Air Dominance, thinking about, planning for, and investing in capabilities that will define the carrier air wing of the future is not transactional activity for us. It's our passion. In simple terms, we are investing in three broad areas to ensure we are ready to support the future fight. The first of all these things is digital. That includes a continued investment in digital engineering, the digital thread, digital twins, model-based systems engineering, full-size determinate assembly, and artificial intelligence, and much more. And we don't just build the world's finest airplanes, we build groundbreaking sustainment solutions as well. Second, we're modernizing our production systems, building factories of the future which are investing in billions of dollars in new facilities, some of which are already open, some coming soon like our new MQ-25 factory, and many of which are secure and classified. These just aren't PowerPoint charts, but real construction projects underway today. And third major area of continued investment is ensuring that we connect our platforms to others across sea, air, and space, which is critical to enduring the future fight. But it's about much more than what we're doing at Boeing. It's going to take all of us to work together, our industry teammates, governments, global partners, to be successful in the future fight. With that, it's my pleasure to turn the stage over to a great visionary leader, Admiral Bill Gortney. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. We appreciate it. Well, first off, I want to thank the audience for being here. It's really great. The seats are almost full, and we just can't thank you enough for, after a big lunch, that you're coming here to hopefully stay awake from this terrific panel. On the panel with me today, the strategy of naval aviation. We have a unique opportunity to talk to that strategy. To my left, Kenny Weitzel, our air boss and air pack. To his left is Chebs Chebby, who is NavAir Syscom, of course. Oscar Meyer, who's Air Lant on the East Coast here. And then we got Bucket Lizelle, who's N98. And then we have Sean Bond from Elbit Systems. He's been with Elbit Systems, joined him in 2020. Extensive experience in aerospace with BAE. But I couldn't help but read in his bio that when he was with Pratt & Whitney, his team won the Collier Trophy in 2002, and that's no small feat. Well done, shipmate. Thank you. I'm going to have a few opening remarks, and Fraley's, I promise to keep it short. And then I'm going to turn it over to our panel. They're going to discuss their piece of the strategy, and then we're going to open up the floor to your questions. So I think we got some mics lined up here, so be ready to ask the tough questions, and please don't ask any of them to me. But for opening remarks, you know, strategies, a lot of people look at strategies and they're big, lofty ideas. I remember when I was at Fleet Forces, the CNO at the time is getting beaten up on not having a naval strategy, just like the current CNO sometimes does as well. Comes with the job. And I had to say, well, I'm not a strategist because I actually get things done. And that's a problem when people do write a strategy, is they make it too lofty and it's unachievable. So to have a strategy that is adaptable and can actually be delivered is absolutely critical. Because we don't get to pick our wars. And we don't get to pick the where and the when we fight our wars. So we need to be ready. The fleet needs to be ready for the near-peer fight today and in the future. And as a result of that, Bucket can talk to the tension between current and future readiness, because that's where the rub is. The combatant commanders, and I'm guilty, I was one, want the stuff right now and can only see this far in front of our faces, where they have to deliver for that capability that's in the face and then into the future. Also, the system, which I'll call Congress, OSD, and the services right here inside the Beltway, you know, they're focused on bright, new, shiny objects at the expense of current readiness. And it was always hard to convince people that investment in today's readiness is an investment in future readiness, because we already own 80% of our Navy, that Navy and Marine Corps that we're going to have just 10 years from now. Therefore, I always look at delivering readiness through 4 lenses: training, readiness, modernization, and recapitalization. Training of the force, it's our secret sauce. We do it better than anybody else. The readiness of the force is everything other than training. Modernization of the force, I think of in terms of, for the platforms that we're going to keep, how do we modernize them so they're relevant in the future? And then recapitalization is the new stuff that's replacing the stuff that we don't want in the future. Now, the other problem is that when people talk, they tend to look through bright, new, shiny objects, but they don't look through what we call the DOT-MLPF, which is doctrine, organizational training, manning, and policy solutions to current and future readiness. Not everything demands a material solution. There's other ways to go about it. So what I've asked the team to do is talk to their piece in delivering the strategy. So the air boss, he's in charge. He's the supported commander. He's our air boss. He's done a phenomenal job, better than I've seen it done in a really long time. And I'm not butt snorkeling there, Kenny. And, but his job, he's going to talk about that strategy, a deliverable and adaptable strategy. Next, we're going to hear from Bucket down there, who's our N98. Bucket has to fund that strategy. And he's going to talk about his particular challenges to do that. And then we're going to put Chebs up, who is Nav Air Syscom, who has to deliver the capability to that Bucket buys that Kenny describes. And then we're going to get Oscar, who is ComNav Air Land, to talk to the man, train, and equip piece as a type commander of that strategy. And then we're going to ask Sean to talk, to represent all of industry that delivers the great capability that we put our sons and daughters into to go into harm's way. So with that, Kenny, over to you.
Thanks, Admiral Gordon. Sorry about the cold that I've got. It's not my normal voice. I appreciate everybody coming in for this panel and letting us talk a little bit about where the strategy has evolved over the last couple of years into 2023 and beyond. We're pretty fortunate to have Admiral Aquilino and Admiral Paparo as now Indo-PACOM commanding officer, as well as Admiral Paparo as the PAC Fleet commanding officer. The theory of the fight, the strategy of the fight has been well defined for us, and they've laid out the guideposts for us across the services, both the joint as well as the naval service, of what it's going to take to win in this next competition in a peer environment. They've done a good job of laying that out for us so that now we can now take that strategy piece and look at the means that we're going to do it and the ways in which we're going to do it to put the strategy together. Oscar's going to talk about some of the man, train, and equip piece of it. But as I look at as I look at some of the means piece, that's where folks in industry in this room have done a pretty phenomenal job. Every naval aviation platform today is either brand new, recently new, is in upgrade, or has a program or a soon-to-be-developed program of record for reconstitution. We are in pretty good shape right now. As I look across those platforms, these are the means, the systems that we are going to use. Look across our carrier force. We have both ends of the spectrum on deployment or getting on deployment now. You have the oldest Nimitz-class carrier on deployment in the Western Pacific, the newest Nimitz-class carrier, George Herbert Walker Bush, in the Mediterranean, and you've got Gerald R. Ford on COM-2X about ready to go on deployment off the East Coast right now. An absolute phenomenal achievement in maintaining our Nimitz-class carriers for the 50-year plus lifespan. Nimitz got extended on her life cycle, as well as over the 14,000 traps that Gerald R. Ford has right now, as Oscar Mayer has done a phenomenal job of working the bugs out of that brand new, breaking new technology platform to be able to go forward. Every single one of our platforms new. We're taking deliveries at VFA 125 of brand new F-35 Charlies, as well as the Marine Corps F-35 Charlies. We're already on a roadmap for TR-3 Block 4 JSF. Super Hornet is going through current Block 1, current Block 2 flying, Block 2 to Block 3s, and new purchase for Block 3, as well as additional capabilities in the Super Hornet. Today, a record for us, 367 mission-capable Super Hornets are on the line today, out of about 560, just under 570 total platforms. Industry's done a phenomenal job. Navy's done a phenomenal job of understanding where our lack of efficiencies were. And 4 years ago, as we started in NSSP2P, we led ourselves, and we're leading the Navy right now, in understanding and having credibility in doing our business. Growlers, 30 Growler capability mods are complete up in Whidbey Island, on the road to Block 2 Growlers. Romeo and Sierras remain the backbone of our fleet as we work towards future vertical lift, and the EW upgrades going into the Romeos are absolutely phenomenal. Only 2 squadrons need to transition E2C to E2D. E2D capabilities are so good, they would like to take the E2D off the carrier and help out with the war between Russia and Ukraine right now because of the capabilities of that platform. I go back and look at P3s or P8s now, the transition to P8s and the 2 more squadrons that are going in reserve. Absolute phenomenal capability. It used to be back in the day, if you had 2 Romeos, 60 Romeos, 3 60 Romeos over top of a submarine, you were going to kill the submarine. If you have 1 P8 over top of a submarine today, you're going to find it and you're going to kill that submarine. Those guys are doing absolutely phenomenal work. One other platform on the carrier, CMV-22. We finished 2 deployments. We're getting ready to work up for a 3rd deployment on Vinson with CMV-22. A game changer for us as we add fuel and logistics capability into a platform to a point that we are rewriting the CONOP for CMV-22. It's no longer going to be a COD platform. All of this to be able to fight the 5076 O plan. TACAMO. As we finish up our transition or continue our transition to Block 2 TACAMO and then go down the EXX path, the TACAMO platform is doing probably the #1 mission, the existential mission that we need to have for naval aviation. Why I stay up at night on the TACAMO, and I'm proud of L3 Harris, and Northrop Grumman Corporation, Boeing Corporation for the work that they've done to keep TACAMO at a call as the most survivable command and control platform that we have. So we have the means to be able to do this. The ways that we're doing it is completely groundbreaking in naval aviation. The student aviators are going through mixed reality, virtual reality in their training, in their VT, their T6 squadron, with the helmets that they're flying. They wrote the curriculum for that, and we're taking advantage of it now. That is moving from the T6 into the T45 platform. LVC is a game changer for our fleet capabilities. No longer do you have to come up and have plenty of red air and plenty of blue air to see a high-end fight. Live virtual constructive is now to a point where we can do that at sea. Abraham Lincoln deployed with live virtual constructive embedded within the ship. So while two planes are out flying around, the threat has no idea what the pilots are seeing on their screens and the scenarios that they are training to. The lead for all of this is Pepper McCoy up at Nautic in his integrated ITL, integrated training. What is that?
Integrated Training Facility.
Integrated Training Facility, ITF. The number of tubs, JSF, E2s, Super Hornets, Aegis systems so that we can fight at the high-end fight, all inside one building without giving the threat any idea whatsoever of the tactics, techniques, and procedures that we're doing, that we will employ because we are rehearsing the next fight. So the strategy is pretty clear for us. The 4 stars has given us the strategy. They've given us the ends. You guys in the crowd, our test community and industries, has given us the means to be able to do it. And the ways piece we're doing inside the Navy with the training systems that we've got, and as well as what you guys are providing us to fight with. We're in a good position right now, a really good position to fight this next conflict, wherever it may be.
Thank you, Air Boss. Okay, Bucket, how are you gonna deliver all that through the POM process?
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. And thanks to the Air Boss, because believe it or not, the Air Boss pretty much lets me run this by myself. When I've got big ticket items that need decision, I go to him and make sure we're on the same page. But other than that, he leads me to the day-to-day running of the acquisition of what's going to fund this strategy. And so I appreciate that. As the Air Boss mentioned, we have recapitalized naval aviation. And so the CNO is very clear in his prioritization for our budget generation, and it's Columbia, its readiness, its capability, and then its capacity in the construct of the budget. Okay, so earlier on, over the last few years, given that recapitalization, there was opportunity to have naval aviation take some money out of its budget to help fund Columbia and SIOP. Okay, so now, as we start getting into 6th-gen generation, into TACAMO, and the other things as we come out of that bathtub of funding, it's time to develop the narrative that is going to start moving some of that funding back into our APN accounts so that we can get on to the next things that naval aviation really needs to do. CNO is also very clear on his desire to have our future air wing be at about the 60% unmanned category. So that then sets a strategic guidance for me to use in conjunction with O-plan execution to frame the narrative of how we're going to develop the future naval aviation force. And so in that guise, when I got to the job a couple of years ago, I got all of my staff together and we developed a plan that we call the Air Wing of the Future. And so that takes 5-year increments, so i.e. fit-up chunks, across all the way into the 40s, and it modifies the content of our carrier strike groups and our carrier air wings from both the content of a carrier air wing and the weapons available in the magazines. And so as you look at O-plan execution, you have to judge when an air wing is going to become effective. And if you're starting from X distance away from the target, given the fact that they are considering that contested space, then the longer the range of the platform and the longer the range of the weapons that it carries dictates the time at which that carrier strike group becomes effective. Okay, and so that's what has been guiding some of the requirements in weapons and platform acquisition in significantly longer ranges than we have contemplated before. There are a lot of implications in doing that. But the bottom line is when we're building out a future force that's going to be 60% unmanned, then we're going to look different than we do today, and we are no longer going to have a fighting force that has 44 strike fighters on the deck, because that's incompatible with a 60% unmanned air wing. So we're going to have to change the narrative from 44 strike fighters to how many targets can I hit, at what range, at what time interval, because that's the true metric that matters. And the type of platform that delivers that ordnance is less important than the ability to do so. And so we need to look at the entire portfolio that is resident within a carrier strike group and how we generate that effect. Equally, we need to be cognizant of what is available in the joint force such that we don't duplicate capabilities and we work within our part of that O-plan execution. But the corollary to that is that the aircraft carrier strike group remains one of the 11 most survivable airfields on the planet. Okay? And so if a fight goes down in one particular area, then some other actor may choose to take advantage of what they perceive as a distraction. And when they do, the single best asset in DoD to go after and cool that down is a carrier strike group. And so for that reason, we need to retain those capabilities resident within the carrier strike group that can handle any situation. So I don't like plans that parcel out specific capabilities and rely on other entities to provide those. I try and keep everything within there so that we can go handle those hot spots. Okay? So covered that. So as we look to fund that air wing of the future, we have numerous unmanned systems. Okay, you've heard talk about CCAs, MQ-25, and bottom line is we're developing an unmanned control station that's already installed on 3 aircraft carriers, and that will be the control station for any UAS that we buy. Okay, we have unbelievable cooperation with the Air Force right now in the development of mission systems for both 6th Gen and CCAs, and I'm very close to getting a signed agreement with the Air Force where we're going to have the ability for Navy to control Air Force CCAs and Air Force to control Navy CCAs. That's a pretty big deal, and it's very helpful when we're developing a congressional narrative that makes them understand that we're not paying for the same capability twice, and it allows the Air Force to spend money on certain developmental items, and then the Navy to spend money on certain developmental items. So it's about deconfliction of requirements between the entirety of DoD such that we can generate the most effective force in the shortest period of time. And with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Chebs. Chebs, how do you deliver it?
I've been holding that cough for a long time. Do you have to cough again?
I got a call.
You good?
I'm good.
Hey, couple high-level points, and then we'll take to we'll go through the rest of the panel members, and we'll get to questions here. So, supported commander, supporting commander. His North Stars for NavAir are make sure we deliver the warfighting capability the fleet needs when they need it, capability. Make sure that the capability we do deliver is ready and available. Think MC and FMC. And the last one is affordability. How do we make sure every single dollar of resource that bucket provides achieves an outcome that matters to the supported commanders? So those are our 3 North Stars. As Air Boss mentioned, FY22 was a pretty good year from a recapitalization perspective, from a readiness perspective. Taking those lessons learned, especially from the readiness, and applying those across capability, affordability, and availability. So we have a methodical process on how we execute each and every single day. Just a quick recap. One of our platforms, you probably figure out which one it is. We had troubles with readiness for many years. And we tried multiple different things. I'm not sure if Admiral Grossclag is out in the audience. I was his vice commander as we tried to get after this, and we never moved the needle. We finally took the time to define our North Star, how many aircraft we wanted, how many aircraft we needed to support the O-plan. And then we took necessary time to define the root cause of our current performance. No kidding, what was the root cause? And then apply the correct controls, the right levers, and measure ourselves towards an outcome. That simple process, as we've taken the wins, the advances we had with Super Hornet, we've applied it to all the other TMSs across both mission capable as well as full mission capable. That same logic and process, we're applying that now to capability and affordability as well. What is our North Star outcome we're looking for? Capability. We need unmanned ISR by a certain time frame. We established that as a Tier 1 North Star. That's a North Star established. We understand the root cause of our current performance, who are the stakeholders, who is a supported commander, who is a supporting commander, and we do reviews at the 3-star level to drive us towards that outcome. And we do this religiously and over again. It's a different way of looking at the problem, but it works. So we've applied that over and over again. So that's how we're delivering it. We've had some successes. We're still learning, especially at the capability aspects of it. Bringing everybody together to make sure we're all aligned on what the North Star outcome is, and then what all the branches are in that driver tree to make sure, and then make sure the responsible and accountable people are delivering. And if they're not, what are they doing to get back on plan? What help do they need? So we've talked about, hey, a couple of the things, if I have a moment here. At the end of, I am butt snorkeling now.
Full power.
At the end of, we did RAFOS and AFOTS last week. And at the end of that, I came home, and it was Friday night, Saturday, with my wife Maggie, and I sent a thank you note to Air Boss for RAFOS and AFOTS. I thought it was a wonderful event for all of us all to get together. But I also added a sentence. You know, you probably don't hear a thank you that often. The accomplishments the NAE has had over the last year under his guidance and leadership with Oscar has been pretty tremendous. We are going from good to great. So this is a good place to be. I think you heard the Air Boss say this. That's under your leadership, and you really have driven the NAE to this point. As we go forward, we need to continue this momentum as we deliver the next generation of capability and make sure we continue to focus on capability, affordability, and availability. All right, I'll pause there.
Okay, Oscar.
I generate forward deployed naval air forces to deter aggression and preserve world peace. And I do that focused on current readiness, really through manning, training, and equipping the fleet. To echo Admiral Cheby's comments, I think naval aviation's made tremendous strides on the equipment side of things. Not to correct the Air Boss in public, yesterday we had 372 mission-capable strike fighters. We're really hitting on all cylinders with the initiative and the expansion of our maintenance operations center in the MOC. We just started doing H-1 aircraft with the Marine Corps. They are embedded with us in person and in aircraft. And we started into Sinatra on the T-45 the first week of May. So we're making great progress on there. We're about ready to take that to a whole new level, though, of what we call MOC 2.0, which is really an initiative led by the Air Boss and inspired by highest levels of leadership, where we're going to continue to take, I'll call it savings, that's really a misnomer, but we are going to be more efficient and more effective at maintaining and producing mission-capable aircraft. We'll continue to pursue our targets for fully mission-capable, but those savings are going to be reinvested into our programs. And that's in-year execution money that we're able to do things like flood lines, flight gear, shelters for aircraft, a whole host of things. But that reinvestment is going to pay huge dividends. We're also seeing amazing results in terms of the OST 42 initiative, which if you're a supply individual, that refers to 42 days of operation shipping time. We've started that experiment on the George Herbert Walker Bush deployment, and they have the highest readiness levels we've seen. What that equals by putting more parts on the shelf, which is truly an output, is about 7 additional fully mission-capable aircraft, Hornets, throughout the entire deployment. That's our Fight Tonight force. And when I talk current readiness, it's all about the preparation and the readiness that we have to have if the fight goes up tonight. Important when we talk about the supply chain aspect of that is we can't just look at putting more parts on the shelf. I think anybody in the room knows that if you have more parts on the shelf, you have more access, that the maintainers love it. They just go to the shelf. What we really need, and this is where we need industry's help, is we need better time on wing, better time, mean time between failure performance. Numerous new platforms, we've really struggled with components out of the gate. We've kind of cleaned the shelves off rapidly because the parts didn't last anywhere near as long. But some of the platforms like F-18 were pretty stable today, but that doesn't mean we should be satisfied with where we are on the reliability of that. Admiral Cheby and I work closely on improving reliability, identifying those outliers, and continuing to make progress in that. And then the last point I'd like to make in the current readiness side is the success that we've had in the MOC, our Maintenance Operations Center. We're in the process of expanding that to what we call the ROC, which is Readiness Operations Center, focused squarely on aircraft carriers. I won't say we're completely fixed for aircraft readiness. We're certainly out of the woods. We're out of the wilderness, and we're continuing to make improvements. Carriers, though, there's a lot of room for improvement. That really holds across the entire ship maintenance industry, whether it's submarines, surface ships, or carriers. We're going to take the exact same naval sustainment system aviation approach to aircraft carrier maintenance. We're going to focus on the planning, the execution, the modernization, and the damage control posture of those ships. The lead sled dog in that experiment, or that new way of doing business, is Harry S. Truman. They're hitting every milestone so far. I wholly expect them to come out of the shipyard ahead of schedule. That is long overdue, and that is exactly the approach that we're taking to carrier maintenance. Thanks.
Thanks, Oscar. Okay, next we're going to turn it to Sean, but after Sean speaks, we're going to be taking questions from you all, so start getting in line in front of the mics. Sean?
Thank you, sir, and also thank you for letting me be here with you today. I think Help America is similar to many members of industry, where we focus on providing holistic situational awareness, an integrated view of the battle space to enable more rapid decision making. And so that's from sensor to shooter. And often that looks like things. It's products, it's platforms. Increasingly, it's the networking of those things into something that is on board and off board, and allows the warfighter, the aviator, the Marine, the submariner to have a sense of what's going on around them, so they can get within the OODA loop of the adversary. Hondo Gertz said this morning at breakfast that he views industry as the offensive line. And if you're going to be a good football team, you need to ensure that your offensive line knows what the plays are that are happening behind them. You're the folks executing those plays. So what's really important is to ensure that we have good situational awareness of where you are and where you're going. What are the headaches and heartburns that you're seeing, sometimes actually created by us? And what can we do to ensure that when you need to run, when you need a gap, we're going to provide that gap for you. That is the role of us, and we need to be part of those conversations, the holy trinity of the operator, the acquirer, and the technologist. And I'm going to argue for a moment that we're the technologists in that trinity. So the more we can do to be involved in that, and the more that we can include technologies and capabilities from small businesses and big businesses, and the ones that sit in the middle, but also technologies and capabilities from our allies, which, quite frankly, are eye-watering in many ways. I think AUKUS is a fantastic step in the right direction of co-development, co-production of technologies across Australia, US, and the UK. And when we prove that we can make that work, I think there's a lot of opportunity for industry to help forge other alliances or relationships for other things that are perhaps less sensitive or perhaps even more sensitive. So we are the offensive line, and we're here to go ahead and let you execute your plays. And I think our biggest challenge is to ensure that we're in the huddle along the way, and we can go ahead and ensure we have the right players on the field at the right time.
Well said, Sean. Thank you very much. Okay, over to the audience. Any questions? Here comes one.
Good afternoon, Admirals. Jerry Miller from the San Diego Navy League. My question is regarding the acquisition of an old and probably a low priority program, the C-40 for the United States Marines. Anybody know the progress of that project and what's going on with it? Thank you.
Bucket?
Well, as you may or may not be aware, there was a divorce called BISOG about 5 or 6 years ago, and so the Marines run their own APN now. It does not run through N98 anymore. And so I have heard that they are getting their first C-40, but I don't control that budget.
If you could see me afterwards, and I can get your contact information, I'll get you that answer.
Yeah.
Okay? Sir.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Lieutenant Commander Dworkin from HCC Log Wing in Norfolk. A couple years ago, I had an opportunity to participate in WEPTAC with a Maritime Fires Working Group, looking at how do we accomplish some long-range things in the Pacific. And one of the things that came out of that discussion was needing to leverage our, allied partners, specifically the Australians and the British, with some of their higher-end capabilities, but running into barriers because they're not fully informed based on classification levels, or sometimes lack of compatibility with U.S. systems, specifically things like data link, in order to give everybody in that fight that fully informed picture. Just wondering if anybody in the crowd could speak to kind of the initiatives going forward of bringing our allied partners into kind of a more fully informed mindset on the O plans and how we're going to accomplish those missions. Thank you.
You want to take that from your previous job?
Yeah, I would say you look at in the PAC fleet, the Australians is the deputy DMO officer there. We've just opened up 4 places, 4 bases and airfields on board the Philippines. Obviously, Australia buying Fs and Gs. There is a conscious effort with the FDOs now to bring in through the war games, which are up to a high number right now, as well as to bring into the rehearsals through the RIMPAC to bring the allies in. Probably the most important rehearsal that allows us to take advantage of and highlight opportunities is the RIMPAC exercise, and then the Valiant Shield exercise in the Western Pacific, where all the countries bring their A game into that fight. To be read in at the high level still has some intricacies. Our national secrets are being guarded at some level right now. I'm not sure how far that's going to go. I don't need that for the tactical and the low operational level of the house. To be able to use maneuver for fires and then fire for maneuver has nothing to do with what you're seeing on your display. What you see on your display, just trust you got it and go kill it.
And Admiral Small at Naval, as he's delivering Project Overmatch, being able to share that information with our allies and partners is a key piece of delivering Project Overmatch.
Hi, Bill Schaefer at Mega Air, and it's not a sales pitch. When you look at Indo-Pacific and you look at the tyranny of distance, and you look, like this gentleman just mentioned, other partners, Australia, perhaps Philippines, perhaps other countries, and you look at the value of gas in the Pacific, I'm not sure if you've ever looked at it this way, but the 4th largest strategic tanker force is under contract to Vice Admiral Chebby. That's 12 airplanes. It doesn't take many more to be the 2nd largest in the world. Is there a utilization of those airplanes beyond what we've done the last 20 years on readiness to provide gas overseas, provide dedicated support? Most of the time we're there because the Air Force isn't, which is why, Admiral, we're dragging CAG-5 to Hawaii today, because the Air Force canceled out and we've got 7 airplanes airborne. Mm-hmm. But is there another role for the airplanes in the Indo-Pacific environment?
You want to talk the contracts out of the house or the?
So, Bill, well, since you and I have talked numerous times on this, your specific question is just be very specific what you're asking to make sure I answer it appropriately.
What I'm asking, sir, is there other utilization in the Indo-Pacific environment with like Australia, Philippines, Taiwan, and other countries that could also take advantage of the assets that are under contract?
I think the answer to that question is yes. I don't know all those opportunities off the top of my head. Do I have a requirement today to provide that service to those countries that you just mentioned? And I do not. So is it something we should be looking at, potentially looking at? I mean, long-range fires and how we're going to execute the O plan, gas is going to be a critical aspect of that. And that's why we're going after MQ-25 and other assets to provide that tanking capability for us.
I think we need to go to Indo-PACOM to help get that demand signal so that Jebs can then execute the contract.
As well as jump in with N4 for the contested logistics war game. They're on a high number of war game right now, and to bring in your number of assets. And hopefully your folks are willing to pay a warfighter's price if you're providing fuel for us. You know, there's some things to work through with that. I think it's a great idea. And, you know, Admiral Paparo talks about no platform, no person. It's going to be able-bodied ship, able-bodied carrier, and able-bodied aviators going forward. If you're volunteering your force, then to run a pilot to bring your force into a war game, where would you need the basing, the overflight, the clearance? I think it's a great idea, especially since we're building up more. You know, our allies are just flowing into us right now.
I'd also like to volunteer my competitor's force too. That makes it a little bit bigger, Admiral.
Yep. Next question. Here we go.
Hey, gentlemen, thanks for having us. John Waters, call sign Flanders. My question is about Huntington Ingalls and other industries, service providers for carrier overhauls and availabilities. And I just wanted to see, I know that y'all are recognizing that there are a lot of steps that go into that process, but for those folks, what steps do y'all see industries taking in order to decrease availabilities and shipyard periods in order to get new construction carriers as well as RCOH carriers back to sea?
Oscar?
Yeah, he's a Christian, so Oscar's going to answer this question.
Yeah, I'll be happy to give you my perspective on that. I think we all recognize that our shipyards, Huntington Ingalls being one of them as a private shipyard, are behind in their capacity to produce ships on time, to build new ships on time, and I think that applies at virtually every aspect. Some of the issues with that are workforce related, some are supply chain issues or institutional issues that really affect the entire country, the entire supply chain, and COVID does play a role in that. But the bottom line is, you know, from our perspective, from my perspective as the customer, I really only care about schedule. And that is that I need the carriers to come out on time when we contracted them to come out on time. That's the elephant in the room. Everything else, from my perspective, is an excuse, and we're aggressively pursuing that. When I talk about the ROC, we are going to have Huntington Ingalls embedded in that. Today, we work very closely. The facility's not up yet, but NNSY, the shipyard, the private or public shipyard, is embedded in that ROC process, and we're going to see the benefits of that synergy coming out of that with Truman's availability. I view that as the tip of the iceberg to really demonstrate that, yes, we can produce on time. And the real key, though, is I think you hit the nail on the head, is it's got to be in the private shipyard, too. I lived that for a long time as Ford's CO. Before I even got there, the delivery date of that was slipping. JFK just slipped to the right. I think it is a national imperative that we move those dates left or hold what we have.
Jeb, do you have any comments on the airplane side of delivering on time?
Yeah, from the carrier, I'm glad I don't have to deal with what you have to deal with, so it's better to be Navair than FC. I'm not sure if Bill Galene is out in the crowd. E6, F-18 SLM, MQ-25, M code for GPS, F-35 TR-3, Block 4. All of them are not meeting the schedule requirements that we have laid out. So we take an active role right now working with the PM, working with the PO, working with our industry partner, again, establishing what is that North Star target, and we need to field this capability. E6 is a great example. The highest requirement of a capability, and we're struggling right now to kind of get that through the repair lines at both Northrop Grumman's getting better, and then we're working with ALC. I think it's focused leadership attention. I think it's establishing North Stars. I think it's taking the time to understand the root cause of your current performance, applying the levers, and then holding yourself accountable. That formula works over and over again for the most part. There are some outliers there. So Air Boss and I, whether we're talking T-45 readiness, E-6 readiness, F-18, what's going on F-35, we track it at our level, and we're asking some hard questions, working with industry. My ask to industry, and you heard me earlier today, please deliver what we have you on contract for from a cost schedule performance perspective. We need that as a minimum. And then you've heard me say this as well, if I or we at NAVAIR are doing something that's slowing you down or costing you time or money or performance, please reach out to me directly so that I can address it. It's important that we execute the plan. We have to have a plan, we have to understand the root cause, and we have to methodically apply the correct levers and oversight to make sure that we deliver on the outcomes.
If I can pile onto that, I think that's an enormously important aspect. To put that in context, as aviators, we're all familiar with cannibalization. We do some of that. It's a necessary evil. I wouldn't argue that we do too much. We do it at probably the right time, and we have throughout our whole career. My sense is we do a lot more of that on the ship side. And if we're talking about a Ford-class aircraft carrier, far too often we've gone to JFK as the parts locker for parts for Ford. Not really from a reliability perspective so much, but because I refer to it as the original sin. When we were building Ford in the first place, we certainly significantly under-resourced sustainment. I think that conversation has to happen with industry to us when they say, hey, you're taking us off target, and I'm going to do 10 days of work to cannibalize this pump to pull out, and then all the restoration work. That's all additive work in an already strained workforce. And I think we have to understand that and probably better document that as well.
Nobody's at a mic, so can I jump in?
Sure.
Carrier force. Okay, so the NDAA requires us to have 11 aircraft carriers. And so we often have conversations about new construction, about build centers, and then we look out in the future and say, what does this do to our carrier force structure? But the other side of that is RCOH performance. And so in the past, we have looked at it and we said, okay, 50 years is the life of a Nimitz-class carrier, and so at the end of that, and RCOH is a sliding scale in the middle of that. Well, what if RCOH gets pushed to the right, and then it ends up that that 50-year mark is only, say, 20 years after RCOH redelivery instead of 23 and a half years? Okay, so that ends up being an early termination. It's why we're talking about service life extension on Nimitz. Okay, but the reality is we need to take another look at that, and my shop's doing this, to take a look at what these force structure charts look like if I assume 23 and a half years of life after RCOH delivery, so that we are able to track to that NDAA requirement of 11 aircraft carriers.
Thank you, Bucket. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Lieutenant Commander Gloria McCrae, FRC Reserve Midwest at Washington at Andrews. My question is, I hear a very cohesive and very comprehensive strategy from all the players on stage. My question is, how does the reserve force fit into that strategy, and how can we best support it?
Well, that's why we have, SNAFR sets about 15 feet away. Airlant Reserve sets about 30 feet away from his. We would not have gotten through COVID if it wasn't for SNAFR working our way through Theodore Roosevelt side of the house. America would not have gotten through COVID for that. All of our listed internal logistical move is done by the Reserve Force. Our adversaries are Reserve side of the house when it comes to the combat support and the ability to make us better. So to take the ways piece and to make us better as we perfect our ways piece, that all lies in the Reserve Force right now. Oscar and I definitely were PERS dudes set in Millington, Tennessee. There was not a day that we walked into work going, I just can't solve this problem. You walk down to PERS 46 to the Reserve, and usually by lunchtime, they've got a solution for you. Active Reserve Integration, which was a key acronym about a decade ago, is alive and well. There's no way that we could exist without the Reserve force supporting us right now, what we would have to do on our own. So I wouldn't, I think the Air Force does it a little bit better because they combine the force, but the way we run it right now under Admiral Mustin, and then with Oscar and I having reps, leadership reps, flag officers at each of our headquarters, when we can't solve a problem, I just pick my butt up and go walk to his office and it's solved.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Mallory Shelbourne with US 9 News. My question is for Admiral Weitzel. You mentioned that you're refining the CONOPS for the CMV-22B and that it's not just going to be a COD. Could you expand on that, what that means, what it looks like, and what's the timeline for what you want it to do?
Yeah, I think if you look at the way CMV-22 was designed with the extra bladders and the fuel capability and the weight capability to travel stuff around, it's meant to be able to support us in the Western Pacific. I mean, that was the design for that. Now, as we go through the N5 and the J5 shops at Indo-PACOM and PAC Fleet, now they're opening those up. The N5 shop, the 4 places that opened up on the Philippines, our partners are starting to open up. As they open up and are pairing with the United States Marine Corps with Expeditionary Advanced Base Operations, places, not bases, to be able to store stuff. Weapons employment, what can we hang out of the back of CMV-22? Communications piece as a node when the threat and we blind ourselves, where can CMV-22, if E2D is not available, where can CMV-22 be as a communications node? This is where it's fun because you're taking the JOs in the CMV-22 community and you're saying, this is your world. Tell us how you want this to be. And they're rewriting their CONOP. We're giving a little bit of guidance from the high operational level on what we think we need you to do. Go out and build a CONEMP, concept of employment, and then we'll build you into a CONOP as you meld into 5076. This is a period, it's a great time to be a CMV-22 guy. You're going there tomorrow, aren't you, daughter?
Lieutenant J.G. Chevy flies a CMV-22.
Boom.
If I can pile onto that too, the aspect that I see is it completely changes the logistics support aspect. That's, no longer does it need a runway to go be a loghead. It really now opens up any place that it can land as a logistics head. So in this notion of contested logistics, that concept is an absolute game changer, not to mention the fact that it can deliver parts to a lot more than just an aircraft carrier with arresting gear.
I was lucky enough to get a 1.5 in the left seat of a Marine V-22 when I was Fleet Forces, and called nasty when he was N98 and said, this is the COD replacement. And it's not the COD. It's not a COD. It's intertheater logistics. When the fleet commanders, I would have killed at 5th Fleet to have that capability to do intertheater lift for those ranges and those distances and be able to service every ship in the strike group, not just going from one airfield to the big deck carrier. It's going to be a game changer, and the demand signal from the fleet is going to be huge. And Bucket's going to have to figure out how to put more into that budget.
Hey, one more thing, just to kind of go back to focus on outcomes. We've made tremendous progress across availability across the entire fleet. CMV-22, MV-22, we have work to do. So we're bringing them into the process that we've brought all the TMSs through, but there is work to be done across affordability and availability and on V-22 that we're getting after.
Thank you.
Hi, Tony Capassi with Bloomberg News. Hi, Admiral. How are you?
Good.
A question for Admiral Witzel and Meyer. China has the greatest navy, or largest navy in the world. What role does naval air play in destroying some of those ships? And how important is the new LRASM that's getting accelerated budget?
Yeah, fundamentally, we're maritime power projection. Off the carrier with a maneuverable deck with 80 platforms that can choose the fight, choose the environment, choose the timing for us to be able to conduct a strike at a time and place of our choosing, where the threat is always guessing. Remember, if they come out, even though they've got inner lines of communication, we're outer lines of communications there. Those inner lines of communications, they still got to come out of their corner if that is the threat. I don't want to be a warmonger.
What anti-ship capabilities besides LRASM do you have?
LRASM's the first line with, we got LRASM 1.0, 1.1 is the next version that's coming out, and then we've got a follow-on longer range weapon that's going through design right now, competitive bid, competitive design, and then it'll go into the DTOT community right now.
Okay.
That is the priority. You've read Admiral Aquilino's and Paparo's. Their top three, one of the top threes is long-range weapons, strike weapons.
For Admiral Meyer, the Ford is going to finally deploy next month. It was disclosed this morning. You were intimately involved with it. Besides the fact it's taken 6 years, what air wing capability is going to, can you just give us a preview of the air wing capability it's going to bring on its first deployment?
Yeah, I'll tell you that the Ford performed fantastically during COM2X. She met all of her performance parameters in the assessment that we do for our strike groups before they deploy. She's back for roughly a month period of time to do some normal routine repairs and that sort of thing, refresh the crew. The air wing will look pretty much like all the other air wings that we have, 44 strike fighters, a blend of Romeos, Sierras, and E2Cs on board the air wing. But the beautiful thing about an aircraft carrier is if we want to change that, we can change that. We can make room, remove some aircraft, add some other aircraft. It's the inherent nature of the carrier air wing. It will evolve. It is inherently flexible. We do that a little bit more, I think, on the West Coast by plussing up some of the Growler squadrons and other things, but that's one of our great advantages.
Can I ask you one? Why hasn't the F-35? Why can't the F-35 be deployed on it right now? It's going to be in like 4 or 5 years. Why wasn't it designed originally?
It could deploy. It's purely a number of the squadrons that we've transitioned. So a little bit of that has to do with the production rate and the buy rate that the Navy has of the F-35Cs. One of the squadrons is coming off, I think it's VFA 95, is transitioning to JSF when they get back from George Herbert Walker Bush. I would tell you that is perhaps a little slower than we'd like to see, but that's just a byproduct of production delays, also acquisition strategy.
And the install for eye level on the carrier itself.
And where the need is. Right. So 5th generation's needed against the J-16s, J-20s, H-6 right now, the Western Pacific. With you combine a JSF with E-2D and Growler, you have some pretty incredible capabilities. Not downgrading the need for Mediterranean and the events that are happening over in the Eastern Europe, or Western Europe piece. Right now, our strategy is to get the most capability forward to the Western Pacific as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Okay, we got time for 2 more questions. These 2 over here. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Lieutenant Nadia Puri. I'm a MH-60 Sierra pilot with HSC-9 attached to the USS Ford. Came back from COM2X this past Sunday and can also attest to the successful completion of COM2X.
How's the food in the Ford wardroom?
Getting better. The aft is the best food, though, the aft wardroom. My question is, with an increasingly complex, contested, and advanced environment, how do we continue to support the current warfighter to ensure our manned capabilities, systems, and LVC training will prepare pilots against our peer competitors?
What did you see in LVC on this COM2X? So I could get in trouble on that question if you say nothing, which I would be very disappointed as a Romeo pilot. You have full LVC capability. You should have seen the last weeks of COM2X. You know what I'm talking about. You should have seen a pretty incredible problem.
Yes, sir. Sierra pilot, sir, and
same thing.
what I
You get it over links. You get it. Get it over capability.
What I did notice was how, as an air wing, we all worked together, how we were able to perform last-minute missions that normally missions we prepare for days on end for, we were able to do at the drop of a dime.
Well, that's terrific.
I'll inject from my perspective here. So I'll reword your question. How do we achieve and maintain a proficiency in the high-end fight for all our aircrew? Whether they're ashore, they're afloat, they're at home, they're deployed. To your point, LVC modeling and sim is going to be a foundational aspect of that. We are currently, fielding joint simulation environment to support F-35 IOT&E, And what we have discovered, it is a fantastic, one-of-a-kind capability for us to train our aircrew in right now. So we're updating the software to make sure we have the most current F-35 software. Please, Lockheed Martin. And we're introducing other capabilities in there as well, E-2D, F-18, Aegis, as well as the Romeo into that platform. Because to train to that high-end fight against those threats, we just can't train anywhere else. So that's what we're doing with JSC, and then with the next iteration is how do we put that at the fleet concentration areas, and then what's our plan to put it out on the ship so that we can maintain our proficiency while we're deployed. So it's a work in progress.
And it's continuing to improve in terms of reliability and capability. I was just down in Key West, and I got to fly on a VFA 106 4V3 Red and a whole slew of injects. You couldn't tell from the F-18s what was what. I mean, the ability to augment that was fantastic. And the ability to do it to the highest end in relatively limited airspace, in distances that represent real-world threats, right off the coast of Cuba without tipping our cards to them, that is an absolute game changer. And I was probably most impressed with the reliability of it. The last time I flew and saw it, it worked about half the time. And I think, like a lot of things we're finding, if we just keep at it and keep writing gripes and keep demanding that it work, we get it to work.
Okay, sir, I'm going to have to, we've got the hook, unless you can make it quick.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Can you make it quick?
I do have a quick one. I'm Commander Anton Allen from CNAFR. I had an answer for the gentleman's questions on the Marine Corps C-40 deliveries. The first one is expected to deliver on the 20th of April, and number 2, mid-August.
There you go.
Oh,
Off my to-do list. Thank you very much. All right, I want a big round of applause for the panel members here. And thank you for participating today. You all have a great day.